Samuel was one of 14 million children living with HIV in an orphanage. When Kyle and Carolyn made a decision to adopt Samuel, along with his brother Seth and sister Rachel, they had no idea how this would change their family forever.
When we went to get the other 3 kids, we spent 2 weeks in Ethiopia, and one day I had brought Samuel back to FLHO, his orphanage, to play with his friends. And I just sat around kind of and watched him play, and there was a little bit of a stir, and 2 social workers walked in with this child who looked like she just wanted to be swallowed into the ground. And I couldn't possibly imagine pain like what I saw emanating from this child. And I got up and I asked the social workers, you know, what the story was, and they had told me that they had just, they had lost their parents, Selah, and she had 2 siblings. They had lost their parents a year, and 2 years for the father and 1 year for the mother, and they were trying to survive out on the streets. The kids were all tested for HIV, and the older siblings were negative, and Selah was positive. So she had just literally found out she had HIV and been taken away from her brother and sister, you know, and brought into this orphanage. I couldn't believe it. I understood the devastation. I was adopting an HIV positive kid, but I didn't know it until I was in it. As time wore on, I realized that her health was getting worse and worse, and that nobody had even inquired about her, which is very common. You know, these kids, you know, they're the modern day lepers. You know, nobody, you know, is really looking to go get these kids, especially when they're older. And now she's advanced in AIDS.
Today, 14,000 people will die from AIDS. The United Nations reports by the year 2010, 25 million orphans will be living with this virus. When we return, we'll meet Margaret Fleming, a mother who adopted 3 HIV-positive children. What happens to children who are orphaned after their parents die of AIDS? Often these children test positive for HIV and end up on the streets or in an orphanage. Margaret Fleming is the mother of 3 adopted children who have HIV. It all began when Margaret was reading an adoption magazine and was drawn to the picture of a little girl living in an orphanage in Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam. This little girl had HIV. Margaret knew she had to meet her.
It was in the hottest, least accessible floor of the orphanage, and all the other rooms there had fans, and they were sort of darkened to keep out the sun, and the children had toys and clothes and so forth. But in this particular room, there was nothing. There were no toys, no words. It was completely quiet. No joy. Nobody ever did anything except pick them up at arm's length, like this, and carry them to a changing table where they were kept clean and their bodily needs were taken care of. They were force-fed often, laying on the floor. The nurse or the nanny would hold the baby's nose and the baby'd throw up, and they'd scoop it up and put it back in anyway. And they had HIV stenciled in black across the backs of their t-shirts. And it was like the Scarlet Letter. And I had already founded Adoption Link, which is our agency here. And increasingly we were working with very vulnerable children and placing children who were hard to place. And so it just kind of fit that we would have a program, an HIV positive children's program, and try to find adoptive families.
Since establishing Chances by Choice, Margaret and her staff have helped find homes for 56 HIV-positive children. Kyle Tweetmeyer is one parent deeply impacted by his visit to an HIV orphanage. He and his wife Carolyn are now parenting 2 children affected by the virus.
Until you're there, you really don't, you can't grasp what it's like to be in a room with kids that have a pretty terrible outlook on what their life is going to be, you know. Until you're there, you just don't get it.
The issue of these kids with HIV and realizing still where they live now, the stigma is still unbelievable. Even within the medical field, even being in the hospital with Selah, every person that came in there with a white coat on would ask me, did you know about this before you adopted her? Just their skepticism was unbelievable. They would tell me time and time again, there's nothing that can be done. There's nothing that can be done for her.
But Selah has stage 4 AIDS, and that's quite different from HIV positive, right?
We were ready and willing, whatever it took, to have her here and to make her part of our family and to put her health where it needed to be. And you know, we also felt at the same time, and we had quite a taste of it, I had a taste of it, especially in Ethiopia, that even if it meant that she wouldn't survive, that it was worth it, that didn't matter. We were going to get her, and we were bringing her here, and it didn't matter.
Just that she had hope, you know. She knew somebody was
And in your mind, if she died with hope, that was as good as maybe you'd be able to do for her. Yeah.
When I went to Ethiopia, I didn't realize how severe the circumstances were. And she was like 32 pounds, and just, it was something I didn't expect, because she changed so much in the year. From the time we had seen her, her body had just succumbed to what they call wasting syndrome.
And she had received no medication to this point?
She had medication. She went through both the available rounds of medication they have in Ethiopia. So she, as far as Ethiopia was concerned and her caregivers and stuff, she didn't have any more options. She was finished. When we were there, she needed a blood transfusion. They would not give her blood from their blood bank because she's in stage 4 of AIDS, and to them, there's no point in that. The only reason she was able to get blood was because my blood wound up being compatible with hers. So they were able to give her my blood, which brought her up, her hemoglobin level up, to be able to fly her home.
Wow.
Brought her up to past an 8, which is what was necessary to put her on an airplane. She would have died in flight otherwise. There was no way to bring her home at a 4.8.
In August of 2008, Selah came home with her new family, the Tweetmeyers. Since that time, she's received the medical attention she needed to survive. Selah takes antiretroviral medications to stabilize her immune system. She's been surrounded with love from Carolyn, Kyle, and her 10 new brothers and sisters. If you were to meet Selah, you'd notice a glow in her eyes, a glow that brings a smile to your face, because she's getting a second chance at life that can't be measured. It can only be felt.